Hi everyone, this is the Movieception Show and I am Fariba, and in this video we're going to do a breakdown of Miss Marvel episode 2. It's going to be the same thing that I did with the first video, where I essentially will kind of give you a perspective of some of the Desi scenes and then kind of just go in depth of what's going on, share some of my perspective and etc. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. Alright, let me stop right here because this is a very important scene, just because it's something that I can totally relate to with a bit more of a complicated name. So yeah, as I mentioned in the first video, it's very common for non-Desi people to mispronounce our names. For instance, my name is Fariba, but people will mispronounce it as Fariba, or even worse, Farbia. And of course, it can get a bit irritating because even as much as the fact that you try to correct people, it still ends up becoming a common mistake. And sometimes I let it pass by here and there, but it can totally be annoying when you've actually addressed this to people so many times that they still make that mistake. Having said that, this is a pretty important scene because, well, we know that Kamala has finally started to gain a bit of confidence since she's gained her new powers, right? Her unexpected powers from the bangle. And one of the things I do love about this scene is that she actually finally confronts her teacher, her gym teacher, and tells him essentially that the way to pronounce her name is not Camellia, but it's Kamala. Now, it is a bit funny because Kamala is a bit of an easier name to pronounce. I mean, if you literally look at the name, it's pronounced as it is, so it is Kamala, but I don't know. But the nice thing, though, is that he's not being ignorant about it. That's at least a good part. I know I can relate to this because I've actually had a gym teacher like Kamala's who has always mispronounced my name as well. Actually, to be honest with you, I feel like he never even knew my name because it was either too complicated or it's just he didn't bother to remember it. But I will say for one thing that I think 2 years after having taken his gym class, he somehow did remember my name and actually pronounced it right. So at least there are some bonus points right there. But yeah, in this case, I totally love how Kamala's finally getting that confidence to finally, put respect to her name and have everyone else pronounce it correctly. So kudos to that. Let me just stop right here real quickly because the whole practice montage kind of just gives me a bit of a vibes from just my childhood. Well, not just my childhood, but my school days. So yeah, I'm just like Kamala when it comes to not being the most athletic. I mean, I used to do soccer myself, but aside from playing soccer, I wasn't the best at it. I can totally relate to Kamala with that. Just something I just want to give a side note to. So that was a bit of a nice jab in episode 2. Stop right here. So we kind of seen a bit of the segments of her practicing and trying to kind of get used to her powers. One of the things I do love about this whole montage is that not only is she wearing her Captain Marvel suit that she wore at Avengers Con, but she also added a bit of something of herself, which is like a dupatta around her waist. That is obviously a nod to basically what we would hope is going to be eventually her official costume that we hope to see later on, probably by the end of the series, which is basically kind of like the Salwar type of inspiration sort of costume, by using also the inspiration of Carol Danvers' own costume with the red, blue, and the gold or yellow. So it's really nice to kind of see those jabs right there, just showing how she's in her initial phase and how it will slowly get into her final phase eventually, hopefully by the series finale or the season finale. Who knows if we're gonna have a sequel or not a second season or not. Another thing I want to reference is that they speak about the bangle. It does look like it is Arabic. I guess that's kind of given, just because Arabic is a very common language used, especially if you're reading the Quran, because the Quran itself is written in Arabic. And even in terms of the Urdu language, the written language itself is it's derived from more of the Arabic the texts and the writtens and all, like the text and all that sort of stuff. It's kind of hard to explain, but because I mentioned in my previous video about just the difference between Hindi and Urdu, but and then how the written language is a bit different between the two and all that. And then we know that with Urdu, it's a bit more with the Arabic. I can't read, like, I can probably pronounce it if I were to, like, see it. Like, I can't see it from here because it's like really like small and all that, but I could probably like read the verse of it, but I wouldn't know actually the real meaning of it. So, but just again, it's really nice to kind of see little details about what's going on and kind of even the Islamic roots that we're going to discover more and more as the series. This is a scene that I want to kind of explain, but I want to go step by step. So, of course, in the second episode, they go to a mosque and they pray. And so let me just give you a bit of the fundamentals of basically the Islamic religion itself. So one of the important things about practicing Islam is that you do have to pray 5 times a day, which is basically Fajr, Suhoor, Asr, Maghrib, and Isha. And so basically you have to pray each time throughout the day. And usually the time would vary wherever you are living. The best way to kind of know when to start praying is like I know a lot of people have like an app for it. I know with my parents they have like a chart with like the times and all that. But essentially it is important as a Muslim that you are praying 5 times a day. It's basically mandatory. Now, does every Muslim do it? I will say no. I mean, I'm a Muslim, and in some ways I do practice it, but also at the same time, I don't. And one of them is that I don't necessarily pray 5 times a day. So that's something I wanted to give a nod to. Another thing is that in terms of praying in a mosque, it is not mandatory to go to a mosque every time, like especially not 5 times a day. I can promise you that if it, in terms of just praying itself and trying to make sure that you do pray every single time necessary, most of the time you're just praying at home. I would say maybe about 90% of the time. Like, you can just pray at home as long as you have like a Jai namaz or whatnot, and that, you know, you perform the necessary steps before praying. And in this particular case, so as I mentioned in my reaction video, what they are performing is known as the wudu. And that's basically where they're trying to cleanse their body up before prayer, which is actually absolutely necessary to do. So that means that they have to, you know, clean their mouths with water. They have to wash both their hands 3 times. They have to wash their legs 3 times. They have to use the water and wash their head, their ears, and whatnot, right? And it's very, very necessary to do the wudu because it is important to be cleansed before prayer. It's just absolutely mandatory. Let's say if you do fart right after doing this, guess what? You got to go back and perform the wudu until you are finally cleansed. Like, this is how strict you have to be in terms of performing the wudu before prayer. And I love that they actually showed a piece of this just to show how Muslims pray in general. Now, there is a day of the week where many Muslims do go to the mosque because it is a bit of an obligation, and that is that they go on Friday, which is basically known as Jummah. So I guess the best way to analyze just, you know, the whole process is that Christians have their Sunday church, whereas Jewish people, I believe, is Saturday. So for Muslims, in their case, it would be Friday. So that's kind of the case right here. I am not exactly sure if they are here because of Jummah or whatnot, or they're just there just to pray. It's a bit hard to tell. I would assume that they actually are in school still. But again, this scene looks like it might be in a weekend, not a weekday, because for Friday, it's kind of impossible to get out of school and perform Jummah, because Jummah is usually around the early afternoon, like 1 or 2 p.m. At least here in Florida time. But yeah, that's just a bit of a gist of how the whole process works and what it's like in the Islamic religion, just trying to perform prayer, when to go to a mosque, and what are the actual procedure that you have to do right before prayer, like such as wudu right here. So yeah, let's get into the remaining part of this scene. this is kind of giving a glimpse of what it's like to be inside a mosque and seeing people pray. And I know that not a lot of people have actually seen something like this before, so it is really refreshing that the episode actually shows the perspective of what it's like to be a Muslim, especially when you go to a mosque and pray, which again, it's not a common thing that a lot of movies or TV shows do in terms of just trying to represent Muslims in the limelight. A couple things I do want to mention is, yes, when it comes to a mosque, in most cases, the gentlemen and the ladies sections are always separated. I know from my experience, like I've been to like 3 mosques my whole life, and they all have been separated. So the men are usually more down somewhere else, and the ladies are probably upstairs somewhere else or in a different room or a different half of a room. So it is true that ladies tend to have less than par conditions, as is shown right here in this clip. So I do love and appreciate it that they are kind of connecting this part of the story to Nakia to kind of give a better voice for women and to kind of give their perspective of what it's like to be a Muslim and seeing the problems in the mosque that the mosque does not address. So I kind of love that this kind of incorporates more to Nakia just trying to find more representation, and that's something that I totally love. Here we also have the Imam. He's like the equivalent of a rabbi, a preacher, a pastor. And as you can see, he's basically giving a lecture. He's basically giving a lecture, and usually most of the time they would like share verses, or they will give some sort of, enlightening sort of advice about life or whatnot. Very common stuff. At least for me, the ones I remember are the salat during Jummah, because those are the ones, if I ever were to go to mosque, those would be the only days I would go. I don't usually go on a random day. I do give this perspective in this series because it's not very common that you see anything like this, and it just comes to show that even with the Islamic religion, it's just like any religion, whether it be going to a church on a Sunday or going to a temple on a Saturday or whatnot, right? Like, it's like the Islamic practices are not as different as from the others. So I love that they kind of give a bit more of a perspective of that and kind of share kind of the story that, hey, this is what actual Muslims look like. They're not that far different from anybody else. So I do love this part. Something I hope is educating people to see the true side of Muslims. Again, as I mentioned in the first video, every religion has their good and bad people, and it just sucks that the bad people are the ones who have a louder voice. So again, I love that we're kind of seeing a bit more of a normal life of a Muslim right here. So because the fact that Kamala asked whether there's alcohol in that drink has nothing to do with the fact that she is 16 years old. It is an actual thing in terms of what Muslims are supposed to practice, of things that they can and cannot do. There are a few things that are considered haram in practicing as a Muslim. One is that you cannot eat pork. It is haram. It's forbidden. We consider that to be kind of unclean and whatnot. 2, you're not supposed to gamble. And 3, you're supposed to not drink. Let me rephrase that. You're not supposed to drink. So I feel like in terms of this scene, it actually refers more to her religious practices, more so than actually the fact that she's only 16 and is it's basically underage drinking. Drinking itself, just because Muslims are not supposed to drink doesn't mean that Muslims don't. Like, I can tell you just from the people that I've been around that I've seen a ton of Muslims drink. It's a very common thing. Just like how, I guess, like with Jewish people, they're technically not supposed to be eating pork as well, like us Muslims. But I know a lot of people who are Jewish who still eat bacon, for instance, right? Same thing here. We have, like, I at least know some Muslims who are Muslims but still drink, and it's just a thing, right? Like, not everyone is going to be a staunch practicing person, right? Like for me, I'm not a strict practicer. I don't even wear hijab. I don't technically pray 5 times a day. But in having said that, I still do follow other things. Like, I don't eat pork. I personally, I don't drink just for other reasons, but yeah, I don't drink, I don't gamble, whatnot, right? But yeah, I just wanted to mention this part because technically speaking, in the Islamic religion, it's forbidden to really drink. And just to kind of give an idea of what the word haram means, it just means forbidden. That's what it is. That just means forbidden, right? So that's all you have to really say. That is that Nakia and Kamala look at Kamran and are infatuated by him and say the words mashallah, which is a very common phrase that you'll use just for anything good that's like happening, you know. Or like sometimes people would just use it for appreciation. Sometimes someone would say it as like a blessing. Here it's kind of just like, holy crap, I'm loving this, right? So I love that they use mashallah because it's like it's just a phrase that people use for endearment and whatnot, or again like affection, appreciation for somebody who's like a very attractive dude. Another thing I want to mention is that I know in my reaction video I instantly noticed I instantly recognized the song playing in the background, and it is called Jalebi Baby by Tusher featuring Jason Derulo. It is a very popular song that I think played last year. I think the way that a lot of people learned about it is like through TikTok or something, and it actually became like a dance challenge or something. But yeah, I've heard of this song before. It is actually a pretty catchy song. Now, is it a Bollywood song? No, because this song did not feature in a Bollywood movie. It is just a song that was created by Tusher and just became like a song that he released. The only time you'll consider a Bollywood song is if that original song actually played in the Bollywood movie itself. But having said that, it is a great nod to bring in some of those music in, because the fact that they did play the song, because even though it's not a Bollywood song, the artist himself, Tusher, is actually, I believe, to be Indian Canadian. So he's essentially is a representation of all of us, third generation South Asian American kids who, have parents that immigrated to America or Canada or any sort of Western country. And then it is us that become exposed to the Western ideology and kind of see like how we are exposed to our parents' traditions, but also kind of get to know more of the Western culture itself. And it's kind of like the mix and match of us kind of assimilating to all these cultures, right? Because even the music itself, right, it's not totally Indian or anything like that. It's not totally Bollywood. You can hear little bits of other influences, like I believe there's like reggaeton, there might be a little bit of Latin, salsa, whatnot, right? So it is a great song. It is very catchy. Again, it is, the name Jalebi itself is actually a reference to the South Asian dish, or not dish, but a dessert that is like a fried thing that instantly is like, that makes it crispy, and then they kind of put the syrup on, and it's really delicious. It is a bit sweet, but definitely love how it says Jalebi Baby. And I think in the music video itself, they bring in a whole bunch of, I think they even like put illustrations of the jalebi itself in and around the music video. So I love that they actually still bring in the name of its song kind of featuring all over. I believe even the song itself is kind of two guys trying to win over a girl's heart. But here it makes sense though as well, because there is a bit of that crush that Kamala has in terms of Kamran, and she has this crush that she has. I mean, I believe the episode itself is called Crush, so it's like a great implication of what's going on. And not just that, I think there's even a double meaning to this, because then we'll eventually learn more about the fact that she does come across some challenges along the way, especially as she starts to kind of learn more about her roots, her mysterious roots. Which might also explain why that's a bit of a crushed moment. But yeah, I totally love this. It's kind of getting us more into just what it feels like to be us in a way. It represents it very well. It's a great song to play as well. Yeah, perfectly. Okay, so this is the one part of the episode that I've been meaning and waiting to go into, because it is about Bollywood. So if you're not familiar with what Bollywood is, just think of it as the Indian version of Hollywood. So yeah, it's just Indian movies, right? Now, one of the things that makes Bollywood movies so distinct from anything else is that not only do they have like their stories or whatnot, that's which is very typical for any movie, but one of the things that makes it so unique is that Bollywood movies have songs. Songs aren't just like what most, Hollywood movies do, where they just have a score in the background, or they have an original piece that just plays in like a credit or something, or they might do something cheesy like in 90s movies. No. Bollywood movies have these original soundtracks that not only play in the movie, but you actually usually will see characters kind of sing along to it in some form, some way, right? They might be, having like a heartfelt moment. It might be like a concert type of thing that's going on a stage where someone is dancing. That's what makes Bollywood movies so unique and recognizable. It's because of this different sense of style they have in terms of trying to play these musics, right? So that's just one thing to mention about Bollywood. If you haven't checked any... Now, in terms of Bollywood, perhaps one of the most recognizable actors in Bollywood is none other than Shah Rukh Khan. He is a very well-known actor in India. Like, what I mean by very well-known, I mean he is like a superstar. I think even his nickname is Badshah because he's like essentially one of the kings of Bollywood, and I think even to this day he's still running even as an actor up until his 50s. I know, so so I'm not really surprised that they mention SRK, which is kind of his nickname, by the way, as well. SRK, Shah Rukh Khan, whatever, right? But it's, again, I'm not really surprised that they mention Shah Rukh Khan because he is one of the most recognizable names. Like, I believe even my non-Desi friends may have heard of his name before. And in terms of just speaking about the actor's filmography, I will even say myself, he is one of the most talented actors in Bollywood. Like, this is an actor who literally had no background in movies or anything like that of some sort. He had to work his butt off to get to where he is today. I think when he established his career, he actually started in roles as anti-heroes and villains, but it's because of those, untypical, not really the most typical, romantic action type that made him so unique in Bollywood, that caught people's eyes, right? Like, he mentioned the movie Bazigar. Bazigar is actually a movie where he is an anti-hero. He's not the most heroic character. If anything, he's anything but heroic. Like, the things that he does is pretty dark. But also there's a story to it where it kind of has like a bit of a revenge quest. I think it is based on a Hollywood movie. I can't really recall it, but in terms of that, he does call it Bazigar, and Bazigar is one of Shah Rukh Khan's best movies without a doubt. I personally believe his best movies are like Devdas. Swadis is definitely one I would say. Chak De India. He has done so many great movies. In terms of just the fact that he, in his earlier career, he used to play anti-heroes and villains, right? There was a point in time where he did start to transition into a different side of picking out roles, and that is the romantic type of guy, right? And they eventually do mention one movie, DDLJ, which actually is Diwali Dulehan Le Jayenge. That is a romantic movie that stars Kajol. Now, in this, it is basically a typical romantic movie, and here's the thing. That movie became such a big hit that at this point now, if anybody were to recall Shah Rukh Khan, they would refer to that movie because everyone recalls his character Raj, the romantic, charming guy, and because of the way that, Shah Rukh Khan just portrays this character. Like, the thing is, this character is supposed to be a slacker, right? But there's something charming about him that just steals so many ladies' hearts, including my mom's, which I'll get into in a second. But Raj became such a popular character, especially amongst the ladies, that at this point it's become his most well-known role to this day. Like, I don't think there's anybody who doesn't know who Raj is from Dilwale Duniya Le Jayenge. And yeah, and to this day, people call him, like, people would just say Raj, because that's his character's name. And one of the things I also want to mention in terms of this movie is that not only did it establish the fact that Shah Rukh Khan can be a romantic leading man, but a big part of the movie also involves his character's love interest, played by Kajol. Now, for those who don't know, in Bollywood, so like in Hollywood, we have typical on-screen couples that we all love, right? Like Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling, for instance, right? Or I can't. Or like, let's say Lauren Bacall and Humphrey Bogart, right? In Bollywood, that's even more important in Bollywood. So one of the most well-established on-screen couples that I totally love is Shah Rukh Khan and Kajol. There's just something about the two of them that when they are on screen, they just hit it off like that. Like, the chemistry is so natural and just just watching them two just being together on the big screen, it's like, I don't know, they just have the most amazing chemistry out of nowhere. And they've actually have done a lot of movies together, so not just Diwali Duniya Le Jayenge, they actually did Bazigar together, which I believe is the first movie they did together. Then there was Diwali Duniya Le Jayenge, then I believe it was Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, then you have Kabhi Kuchi Kabhi Gum, and then My Name is Khan. But anytime they're in the screen together, just the chemistry between them is just impeccable. Like, it's so natural. You can sense how their characters love each other. They just know how to do it on the screen, and they're two amazing actors who not are only amazing actors individually, but when they are together, it is like that. Like, it is just amazing to see them. That's why I wanted to mention that a little bit, because again, I love the whole Shah Rukh Khan and Kajol combo, and that's something to mention about that as well. Going back to just talking about Shah Rukh Khan, again, he's one of the most well-established actors in Bollywood. Like, again, I mentioned movies like Swades, Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, Kal Ho Na Ho, Kabhi Kuchi Kabhi Gum. I don't think there's really ever a time, well, I'll take that back, but he has really been very consistent with having so many great movies that there is the argument that he has a lot of, he has probably one of the best careers as an actor in Bollywood. Now, having said that, in terms of him not having a bad movie is not necessarily accurate. I will say that there has been a bit of a decline in terms of his movies recently, like Jab Tak Hai Jaan, Diwali. I can't remember his latest one. I think it was like Cure or something, or Fan. But there was a bit of a setback in terms of his acting career recently, that I believe he took a bit of a break for a little bit just to kind of, rejuvenate himself. And I do believe he does have a movie coming up soon, so hopefully it might be a resurgence in terms of going back into Bollywood. I think one of the funniest things with regards to Shah Rukh Khan is that he has also done action movies as well. So like Dawn. I think Dawn is the only one I can recall at the moment. But again, this is an actor who has done so many things in his career, from playing the villain, playing the anti-hero, playing the romantic guy, playing the action dude, playing some, like, he is amazing, right? And that's why so many, Desis recall his name, because he is that popular. He has such the stardom that even a non-Desi will know who he is. So that's just something that I wanted to say right there. In terms of my own personal life when it comes to Shah Rukh Khan, let me just say that this is an actor who has literally been in my life since the day I was born. Like, I'm not kidding about this. Like, my mom and my dad love Shah Rukh Khan so much, especially my mom. My mom cannot stop, drooling over Shah Rukh Khan. Like, she absolutely loves him. If she hears a Shah Rukh Khan movie, we gotta go to the theaters right away. And this has happened so many times. I'm not lying. This has happened so many times. But yeah, she totally loves Shah Rukh Khan. Shah Rukh Khan is absolutely her favorite actor. And not just that, but even my dad likes him too. Not in the same way as my mom, of course. And now, in terms of my life story and how I just mentioned that he's been there my whole life, literally, I'm telling you, when it comes to the music in Bollywood, right? Again, the music is a big, big part. And growing up, like the day that I was born, my parents actually were playing all these songs. And I believe the one that I can recall is from a movie called Paradise, which does star Shah Rukh Khan. And the day that I was born, or a couple of days when I was born, not the day I was born, but the day, like there's literally footage of a few days after having been back home from the hospital, whatnot. And my parents are literally playing music from Paradise. It's basically like my lullaby, right? But what I'm trying to say is that that this is a movie that features Shah Rukh Khan, and Paradise is a really good movie too. But this is a movie that featured Shah Rukh Khan, and to this day, I have so many memories of watching Shah Rukh Khan movies, of watching movies that feature these songs and whatnot, right? That has Shah Rukh Khan in it, right? And it's like he's been there my whole life. So that's why, again, it's not just the fact that they know who he is, but it's like he has been a major part of our childhood in terms of trying to keep up with our more Desi culture. And just mentioning about Shah Rukh Khan again, it's like a great thing to do, like just trying to get more people to recognize him and who he is, especially if you haven't really heard of him before. And one thing I do want to mention is I did forget, like, in terms of his talents, this is an actor who is, again, a very talented actor. He's not like just some fluke or whatnot. Like, we have the Oscars in Hollywood. For Bollywood, they have the Filmfare, and they actually do have a whole category for Best Actor, Best Actress. And this is an actor who has won numerous Best Actor awards at the Filmfare. I believe he actually holds a record. I'm not sure if it's like overall awards, because he has played a couple of supporting characters before, but he has won a lot of Best Actor awards. And again, like, I love that they reference him. I hope that they continue to reference him. I know they reference him again later on in the episode, but he is a major part in terms of just knowing the Desi community and the Bollywood part of it as well. Like, Shah Rukh Khan is literally the first thing you'll think of. And yeah, totally love that they mentioned this. And especially if, for Pakistani people, they will literally call his name, because again, he's a very popular, very highly regarded actor in Bollywood. Again, I mean, rarely does he have bad movies. He has had bad movies, but it's a rare occasion. And again, it just speaks to the fact that Shah Rukh Khan does have this, thing where it's just like anything he touches just turns to gold, basically. So, for the most part. But yeah, again, phenomenal actor. Totally love him. Definitely check out some of his movies. Again, I recommend movies like Devdas, Bazigar, Galhona Ho. Swades is definitely the one I feel like is the most underrated, underappreciated one, just because it is a different type of movie compared to the typical Bollywood films. But yeah, again, I totally recommend watching his movies. In this scene, because it was like whole montage that was going on with Kamala just having her moment and just like, singing along and whatnot. And again, I love how this is kind of a Bollywood-esque type of scene that's going on, because again, we just talked about Bollywood, and now here she is kind of just like, having her Bollywood moment, singing along and just in her, La La Land. And I love that they did that, because it just shows like the whole Bollywood influence and whatnot. Like, even when I was growing up, I always thought, oh, if Bollywood movies have all these music, like has the music and people dancing in the background and even the characters dancing, why can't I do this in real life, right? Only, to see that it doesn't happen in real life. So, bit of a disappointment there. But again, I love how they literally have a scene like this where it's kind of like Kamala having her Bollywood moment. Again, really hilarious. Well done with this. Again, great job with just, again, great job. It does talk about more so about the representation of women in Islam. And I know I spoke about this in detail in my first episode. I won't go more into it, but this is actually a very, very important scene in terms of just showing that, hey, even as a Muslim, she has made her choice as to what she does and does not do. And in this case, Nakia has made that choice to wear a hijab. And even she says that this is what she feels like is right for her. That's her personal choice. This is something that I've been trying to reiterate as a Muslim myself, that like, even though like there are the rules or whatnot, it doesn't take away the fact that some of us as Muslim women still have made our choices. And Kamala here doesn't wear hijab, right? But Nakia does. And she still reiterates that this is her personal choice. She doesn't care what the world thinks about it. At least this makes her feel comfortable about who she is, what she wants to be. And I just wanted to really reiterate this again. And just her saying this kind of just proves what I was trying to say in my first episode in terms of the contrast between two Muslim women yet who look totally different. So great job on that. They reference Kingo because he's actually from Eternals, and we know that, you know, he kind of played around with the whole Bollywood superstar thing, so that's a hilarious nod to the Eternals right there. Love it. I totally love this scene because there's just so much to unpack. So yes, it is a bit, you know, unsettling when a dad or even a brother sees their sister kind of going on dates. And I feel like this isn't just something as a Muslim or just any Desi deals with, but I feel like this is for anybody, for any, you know, girl who goes on a date, that there's always the fact that their fathers are a bit overprotective about this. So I love that bit. I mean, again, it just shows that she is a teenager who is growing up. A couple of things I will say that's a bit more Desi-esque, you know, references is the fact that they mention the name Chaudhary. Very common name that you'll hear in the Desi community. Even I probably know like 20 Chaudharys, maybe more than that. There's just so many of them. So I felt like it was really hilarious that they mentioned Chaudhary. I was like, that's like anybody. But the thing that really caught my attention is the fact that Kamran switched his accent from the British to the actual brown accent. I literally was like losing it. Because this is a very common thing that I've actually seen personally with my dad. Like, and considering the fact that my dad is from, and actually was born in Bangladesh, he doesn't have a strong Indian accent compared to most of the people that I do know. Like, holy hell, can I just say that my aunts have a very strong Indian, you know, South Asian accent. But when it comes to like certain things, my dad does purposely switch to the South Asian accent just for, you know, certain occasions where things haven't been, you know, working out too well. I'm not going to go into those details. But I just, listening to Kamran do that just made me think about my own dad. Like, it is very easy to kind of switch into the South Asian accent if you wanted to. Again, like, you can literally, you know, catch it right away. I thought that was a very hilarious nod. So, yeah, I just wanted to mention that part. This is a very, very important scene right here that I want to stop in, because now we're kind of going more into the history behind what happened with Pakistan and India, and just basically Kamala's roots right here, like her whole heritage. So, for those who don't know, the 1947 partition is basically Pakistan and India gaining their independence from the British Empire, right? Because for at least a while, like, I think maybe like 70 years to maybe 100 years, they were under British rule for a very long time. And of course, there have been a lot of conflicts in between those years before the 1947 partition, where they've been mistreated, there's been rebellions and whatnot, and it took a while to get to this moment. Of course, a lot of people might know or recognize the name of Mahatma Gandhi. He is one of the few people who actually helped gain India's independence. Another big name is Muhammad Ali Jinnah for Pakistan side. And of course, eventually there was a 1947 partition. But yes, as her father says, the British Empire left them to deal with the mess. And yes, it was a major, major mess. The fact that because there's going to be this whole redistricting between the countries, or the rebordering, whatever way you can say it, people are now, there was a lot of this chaos between people trying to figure out whether they're going to be in the Pakistan side or whether they're going to be in the Indian side. And it did even cause a lot of deaths. It's a very, very important part of history. I won't go dive too deep into it, but just know that there was a partition between Pakistan and India. It did break the country apart. there was a rebordering, and there was a lot of deaths as a result of people trying to just travel in between and trying to figure out where they're going to reside and remain in. So again, right here, it's a very common story like that. I would say my grandparents would be the ones who may have recalled this, but here's the thing. He also mentions Bangladesh, and so my family's from Bangladesh, so I'm not Pakistani or Indian. I'm Bangladeshi. Now, her dad references Bangladesh, and it's not exactly correct. When the partition did take place, Bangladesh did not become Bangladesh. What Bangladesh did become was East Pakistan. So actually, Pakistan was still taking control of Bangladesh at the time. We were just known as East Pakistan at that point of period, right? Bangladesh didn't become Bangladesh until 1971. Or dad does refer one country, and that is Bangladesh, which is actually my parents' home country. So Bangladesh was not exactly Bangladesh by the time the 1947 partition took place. To be honest with you, the thing is that Bangladesh was still under the rule of Pakistan at that point. They were still kind of controlling the Bay of Bengal area. And just to give a bit more details about Bangladesh in general, it is recited by a group of people who are ethnically Bengali. So I am a Bengali person by ethnicity. We're not the only Bengalis, of course, because there's a huge community of Bengalis. Another common place where you find Bengalis are actually in West Bengal in India, which is a whole different side right there. So there is a whole group of people who are Bengali, and then again, it's part of the whole idea that it is in the Bay of Bengal. That's just the whole gist of it right there. But yeah, by that point in 1947, Bangladesh was not Bangladesh yet. It was still under Pakistan's rule. It was actually referred to as East Pakistan. And just like any independence story, Bangladesh is nothing like Pakistan. And because of that, a lot of things that Bengali people or Bangladeshi people were told to follow, they did not like. Like, for instance, what their main language is supposed to be, or what government they want, right? So on and so forth. And I obviously have a rich history with this because, technically speaking, Bangladesh did not, well, not technically, but Bangladesh didn't even get their independence until 1971 when they fought for their independence against Pakistan. And I would know because my own parents have actually lived this moment. They were actually kids when this happened. Even my own grandfather was a staunch, vocal person who was against the Pakistani government and wanted their own government. He was vocal about trying to fight for their own freedom. So something that also kind of gives me... I'll stop here because it's kind of funny because, again, I do have one living nani. I do have one living nani at this point, although technically speaking she is kind of very weak nowadays. But in terms of just watching this scene, is very relatable. Like, our grandparents just, trying their best to use technology as the best as they can, but, absolutely fail. But again, I love how they try to use and utilize all this technology and put the effort into it. Again, it's just a really nice, subtle moment right there between her and her nanny. Just because we haven't really met her until now. And now she's really trying to understand what her background is. Like, what is her family? Like, who is Aisha, for instance, right? And this is something that I've actually mentioned before, that I feel like I don't even know a part of my whole family either. Like, I would ask my parents, hey, where does our family go back to, right? Like, who are they? Like, where are my great grandparents or whatnot, right? And they can't really answer because either they don't know the answers to it or they just don't really want to talk about it, right? Just in a similar way that Kamala feels this. So even I can relate to the fact that there's just so much of this mystery behind her whole family that no one's really saying anything. No one has the right, answers to it. And I can also understand in that same sense as, like, I'm also curious about my own family heritage, yet I don't, no one can give me the answers to it. So yeah, I can totally relate to this. Stop here a little bit just for a little side reference. I love that her dad talks about Bon Jovi. My dad also kind of had his whole phase in terms of loving these bands. Like, he mentioned Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, Bon Jovi. So he also been through that phase as well in the 80s, because he, has been through all that. So I love that they kind of reference that. Like, again, I love how I see my parents kind of being represented here as well, especially in terms of like how they've kind of managed the whole like assimilation into the Western culture. So kind of a nice nod to that. Basically, what the guys are wearing is a Punjabi. It's a very common fashion style that men wear in South Asia. Even my dad has worn Punjabis before, so very common thing. The moms are probably wearing a salwar kameez. Some of them are wearing kurtas, like the girl right down there, like right here. That's a kurta, by the way. But yeah, so that's just something I wanted to reference. Like, this is kind of just how we dress. And not just like in terms of like holidays, but even in simple parties, right? We dress like this in a typical style. And in terms of Punjabis, not so much, but I don't see guys wearing that as much. But I do definitely see them wear it in occasions like weddings and holidays like Eid. As for the ladies though, we always almost wear salwar kameez unless it was like different, events or whatnot. There's always exceptions to it. In terms of the Eid itself, there's a lot to unpack on terms of that. Like, even in my reaction video, I was very, like, surprised to know that we just somehow got into Eid. I mean, I love that they actually try to show what Eid is like what we do on Eid, because, like, I feel like people don't know what we actually do on this day. Like, we hear about Passover, we hear about Sabbath, we hear about Lent, but we know nothing about Eid unless, of course, if you're a Muslim, right? Just take the time to kind of break this down a little bit. So there are 2 Eids in a year, right? There's Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha. So Eid al-Fitr is the one that is the big one, the one that I, remember the most of, because right before Eid is Ramadan, and Ramadan is like a 30-day, practice where people are fasting from sunrise to sunset. And they have to keep on doing this for 30 days up until Eid. It's basically an obligation to do as a Muslim. And again, it just leads up to Eid, right? And usually Eid is determined not based on just like any like calendar or whatnot, right? It actually it depends on the phase of the moon. It has to be a full moon, right? And it doesn't have to be, it's not just a full moon from anywhere. It has to be, you have to see the full moon in Saudi Arabia to announce when actual Eid's going to take place. So that's why whenever you have, in terms of Eid, there isn't really a set date, because we don't know how the moon is going to, appear. So that's just one thing I wanted to reference. But also, this is one of the reasons why I was a bit surprised that Eid happened so quickly, because there hasn't been any references to the whole Ramadan aspects. Because literally in the first episode, we see Kamala's brother, who is literally a religious person, praying and still eating what looks clearly to be the daytime, right? And you're not supposed to be eating during the daytime during Ramadan. So that's why I was a bit confused why there wasn't any depiction of Ramadan that happened beforehand. So I'm just a bit confused with that. I don't know if it's just because they really wanted to show at least what Eid was about, at least just to give like exposure or whatnot. But in terms of Eid al-Fitr, this is kind of what now, again, my experience is a bit different, but in terms of the whole aesthetic, it is all about going out to eat, meeting friends, gossiping, right? And it's always going to be a big occasion. Like, Eid al-Fitr, at least from what I've been, I've experienced, is that it's always a big event. Like, people are dressed up, people wearing their makeup, people are in their best, looks, dressed well, making food. Like, even my mom makes food the night before and makes sure that everything is prepped and ready for that. And it's not just that, right? But we don't just eat food at my place. Like, we don't just host, the lunch or whatnot. But people go around and go into each other's houses, eat, gossip, talk, whatnot. Some people might, change clothes in between. It all depends on what the person wants to do, right? But Eid is a very big day for Muslims. That's something that I really have to reiterate. Especially Eid al-Fitr, because that's the one that happens right after Ramadan, where it's kind of just this celebration that you've done it, right? Um, Again, so now I don't like, at least in my experiences, I don't do festivals. Like I've never gone to festivals during Eid. It's more just like going to people's houses and whatnot. But again, the whole like idea of it still makes sense, right? Now in terms of Eid al-Adha, that's a whole different thing. Like it is an Eid, but it's not as grand or big as like Fitr, at least in my experiences. So Eid al-Adha is actually Qurbani, and because it does involve killing animals, and I'm not really, yeah, it kind of can be a bit unappetizing. So that's just me. At least in my experiences, whenever I would go and you know deal with Eid al-Adha, there usually would be like a farm or some sort of picnic, which is a little bit of a smaller occasion than Eid al-Fitr. But again, or if not, like if it's just something that's gonna be at home, my mom will probably prepare a lunch based upon the animals that were, sacrificed and killed in the name of Allah, whatnot. So that's Eid al-Adha. So that's why I don't think this is Eid al-Adha, because if that were the case, it wouldn't be as this big grand thing that I'm seeing right here. Again, it could just be a different, like there could be a difference between just what people do in different, states or whatnot, but I highly doubt that. But that's just me. But I think this is Eid al-Fitr, and if that's the case, I am a bit confused why they didn't show the Ramadan aspect of it. Again, it could just be that they want to at least have a part of the series where they show Eid to kind of give that representation, just give that prospect of it, which is totally fine. It's not as accurate as I would have wanted to be. Like the whole depiction of Eid al-Fitr is not accurately being shown in the series. But I'll let that pass for just this one mistake. But yeah, I just wanted to reiterate. I just wanted to really give information about that, because like there's just so much going on that there are things that are amazing to see, because again, this is the first time that non-Desis are actually seeing what it's like to celebrate Eid, but also at the same time as people like me who actually do know what we do on occasions like Eid, and to see the inaccuracies, it can be a bit underwhelming. But yeah, I just wanted to give that information out in terms of anybody who wanted to know a bit more about it. But yeah, of bringing in non-Desi friends to celebrate, very common thing. I think I have on occasions invited my non-Desi friends to come and celebrate Eid, although I don't think I've actually managed to get any of them to come, because either I'm in college or, again, most of the time Eid has been on a school day, so again, it's just really impossible to really do any of that. And another thing that I do want to mention is that in terms of Eid, like the recent Eid actually happened in May, right? Early May. The upcoming Eid al-Adha is going to come out, I believe, in July. So if that were to be the case, that this is Eid al-Adha, I don't know how this would work in terms of the fact that Kamala is still in school, right? So again, I think this is Eid al-Fitr more so than Eid al-Adha, because again, she's still in school. But yeah, this is kind of just what our life is like. We're like, you're literally just eating, gossiping, and just dressing up. That's all that really is. It's just so much fun. Like I love celebrating Eid al-Fitr because it's just a really chill time. So yeah, stop each of them because there's so many cliques. But in a sense, yes, there is a lot of cliques that you're gonna see in the Muslim community. They're pretty distinct to find. Mosque bros, I feel like this is pretty true. Like you finally find those bougie, boys out there who like, look like, F-boys. Yeah, I gotta be careful with my YouTube, yeah. Always seen them like everywhere, but they do exist. Pious boys, so at least I haven't personally ran across somebody who I know is very pious boys. I would say that they might be around, but here and there. But in just my personal, experience, I haven't really encountered one like that. But it could just be very possible that this is a very common thing, and I just don't really interact with them. While Friday is basically the sacred day for Muslims, in terms of learning the, the Quran and the Islamic ways. There is a Sunday school for Muslims, and so there are teachers for that. For me, I kind of, the way I learned just the Quran itself, it was in a different way. It was kind of more like homeschooling, but there is actually a thing that the mosques do provide in terms of having Sunday school to allow Muslim children to learn more about the Islamic religion, and as well as learning the Quran and trying to understand and read Arabic, because it's not an easy language to read off, by the way. It's not. But yeah, in terms of Sunday schools, I don't think I've ever encountered like a group of them, but they are scattered everywhere. So very interesting bit right there. That clique, I mean, I think this might just be because of the fact that it's a generational thing. Like when I was a kid, I don't think there was really an Insta clique because Instagram didn't really become a thing until more so the 2000s. I mean 2010s. Let me reiterate that. So in terms of Insta cliques, I probably haven't really, encountered them as much as maybe Kamala and Nakia have experienced. Again, it's just probably, again, I haven't really been going to the mosque as often, so it just might be because of that. They might exist. It's just possible that I've just never really encountered them because, again, of maybe a generational thing, or the fact that I just really don't go to the mosque anymore, or like, I haven't been there recently. So yeah, this one is an interesting bit, but again, it could just be a whole like generational thing that I personally may have not experienced, but maybe somebody who's younger may have seen more frequently. It's not very common to see that many converts. Again, like I can't really speak onto this. Like it could just be more so a preference to whoever the follower is. I feel like I may have maybe seen more of them in like the first mosque I used to go to when I was a kid. Nowadays I go to a different one because there's a much closer one to my house. Yeah, by the way, there's been more mosques opening nowadays than there was before. Like I think there was like only one back when I was like a kid, but now there's more. But yeah, in terms of converts, they might be there. I just never really, counter them as well. Again, it's just like something that it just might be my community that it's not a very common thing, but yeah. That is something that I have seen throughout. Yes, there will be those mini harami girls who are just, they're not, how do you really explain it? So, they kind of are just a bit more playful, and they kind of do a lot of stupid things, and that's just really what the harami girls are. They're not, religious like the Sunday school teachers or just like any other mom or dad. They're just there to kind of just play around or whatnot, and sometimes they just break the rules when they are at a mosque or something. So what, right? Yeah, these are very common. I'm not really surprised about this. I feel like I've seen more of the mini harami girls growing up and in different mosques than like any of the other cliques. But yeah, I'm not really surprised. Because I don't think the Illuminati became a big thing until like maybe later on in the 2000s or early 2010s. But the group itself, like, it's still the same thing, right? You have the gossiping aunties who are just there, just to talk shit about other people, whatnot. Yeah, not surprised about this bit. This is a very common thing. Again, this one is it's one that you always see no matter what. Like, this is the most common clique. So, yeah, again, hilarious. My reaction video, this one did kind of irritate me because we're kind of going back to the whole stereotype of South Asians and just brown people in general, that they're just considered like terrorists or thugs in the eyes of the feds. I know I literally lost my shit with this because it's kind of like you're basically being stereotypical, you're basically being an asshole, you're literally showing your prejudice towards people like Muslims and the South Asian community and whatnot, right? Just implying that, because you're seeing this person, and because they have a brown skin, that means that, oh, by the way, they must be a terrorist, right? That means that they must be causing terror, even though it's clear from the video that Kamala saved Zoe's life, and yet here we have the damage control, people saying that, oh, we think otherwise. And the fact that they kind of deduced that she was a South Asian, it's kind of like, that makes it even feel worse, right? I'll go more into the later part of the video and kind of just give a sense of what it feels like. Because they do end up appearing in the end of the video, so I wonder what the people at the mosque may have felt about this. But yeah, this one kind of did irritate me a little bit, just because it kind of goes back to the stereotypes of like, oh, if it's a brown person, we're gonna assume that it's like a terrorist or whatnot, right? So that one really kind of annoyed me. One other thing I want to mention is that we do see this young boy, right? And he's wearing a hat, right? So basically what he is wearing is a kufi. So imagine basically a yarmulke that Jewish boys wear. It's kind of the same thing here. The kufi is just basically what Muslim boys wear on top of their heads, typically more so towards prayer time. But it's not really mandatory. At least from what I've seen, I don't always see all the boys wearing one during prayer. I think it's just more of a preference nowadays. But yeah, I just wanted to just kind of explain that, because I know that it kind of seems like a really familiar thing, and I just want to reiterate that. Oh, we just saw the whole scene with the whole damage control just appearing out of nowhere and about to attack or ambush Kamala. And again, it kind of just, like, the fact that they actually end up at a mosque is not going to bode really well for them in terms of PR, just saying. Just because it's just going to show that the damage control are basically Islamophobic, and that they basically came to a mosque for the sense of trying to so-called find a terrorist, or that, again, they're just basically profiling people for the sake of the fact that they have a brown skin. So, yeah. And the fact that this has happened, it's not going to work well for them in terms of PR. So I'm very interested to see what's going to happen in the third season, like how they're going to address that scene in terms of like the stereotype and the prejudice and just like the fact that this is still a problem even in society today, that people are still being prejudicial about Muslims and just brown people in general. So yeah, that's something that I'm a bit curious to see in the next episode. But yeah, that was about really it in terms of all the Desi scenes that showed up in terms of episode 2. I am very excited to see what happens in episode 3. Like, I thought that an actor was going to show up in this episode, but I believe it might be the next episode. So we'll just keep on doing the 2-part videos. One part is going to be the reaction and just the discussion, initial review, and part 2 is going to be the breakdown of just essentially any of the Desi scenes that happen within the actual episode, to kind of give an education of what it's like, what's actually happening, the terminology, or kind of just my own personal experience of why it's something that I can totally relate to. But yeah, that's really all I have to say. Like, is there anything that you felt like you now kind of know a bit more about? Is it the whole religion, the Bollywood part, because that was a big thing, because now you know more about it? Is there some things that you can relate to even though you're not Desi, or is there something that now you appreciate, that you kind of have this open-mindedness that, okay, now I'm kind of starting to see a bit more of others' perspectives that I haven't seen before, and now this is really opening my eyes to it? Let me know what you think. Like and comment, subscribe, and again, thank you so much for all your support. I can't wait to drop my next reaction video for Miss Marvel episode 3. But that's all for today. Thank you, and yeah, I'm gonna sign off. Bye.